Hey there. The first principle I'd like to discuss today is object permanence. This term points at the idea that when something isn't present, like mom for instance, it still exists even though you can't see it right now. Developmental psychologists say it's around the age of 4 to 5 months when most babies begin to accept this obvious truth. What does it get them to understand this abstract idea? It gives them a sense of safety and security. Imagine that a baby before this stage is crying in her crib because she believes she has been abandoned forever when mom is not present in the room. The same idea could also apply to their favorite stuffed animal or blankie. As this idea of object permanence gradually seeps in, mostly through social learning, observing that other people are not freaking out when mom leaves the room, the baby begins to feel more secure because they're beginning to believe mom or the stuffed animal exists even when they're not in the room with them. Quote, "It is impossible not to believe what you see, but it is equally impossible to see what you do not believe. Perceptions are built up on the basis of experience, and experience leads to beliefs. It is not until beliefs are fixed that perceptions stabilize. In effect, then, what you believe, you do see." End quote. One of the implications of the 2022 Nobel Prize for Physics is that object permanence is, in fact, not true. The fact that locality isn't real suggests that when you turn your head towards your mother, you are rendering that image of her on the fly. She wasn't there until your sensory perception rendered her there. The easiest way I can explain this is to go back to the Grand Theft Auto metaphor. The way it works in the game is the red Ferrari, which appears to your right when you turn your head, wasn't there until you turned your head to see it. And you see it because you expect it to be there, not because it is there. There's still no red Ferrari anywhere inside your computer. The obvious truth and the abstract truth do not align in this case. It makes a lot of sense that emotional attachment issues arise when we're considering these abstract truths, which even scientists are not pointing at. It's easy to understand how believing in them would cause one to believe they are in fact alone in the universe. There's another principle which has been accepted by most psychologists, which applies to how we learn things. This one is called cognitive dissonance. If your head is full of ideas and beliefs about how the world works, and new information enters into that system, your head, which is contradictory to all of the beliefs already present there, there's no reason to think the new information will blend in harmoniously with all the opposing information already present. It will be dissonant, just like if you play a chord on the piano, but add a note which isn't in the same scale. It sounds disharmonious or dissonant. There was a developmental psychologist named Lev Vygotsky who was active around the turn of the 20th century. He coined a new term in the field of educational psychology called the zone of proximal development, which points to an obvious truth. Quote, "Learning occurs in the gap between what a learner can do independently and what they can achieve with guidance from a more knowledgeable other, such as a teacher, peer, or cultural tool." That's from ChatGPT. This explains why, in algebra class, instructions start with the most simple foundational ideas. The student is asked to practice applying these ideas to problems located in the workbook, in the back of the textbook. Until they've integrated the idea into their belief system, the pool of principles that have already been accepted or integrated. This must occur before you get introduced to the next principle, because it is supported by the foundation you have built by mastering the first. Not by accident, this is also how the workbook for A Course in Miracles was designed. It's with this acceptance of the phenomena that teachers are able to devise this very practical approach to teaching their students new information in a more efficient way. It also explains why you might be very skeptical of the ideas I've been sharing with you. They simply don't fit seamlessly into your belief system that you're currently holding on to. Then there's the emotional aspect to be considered. You can understand why the baby, having accepted the apparent truth that mom exists even when she's not around, isn't going to want to let the idea go just because 3 scientists said it's actually not true. Once she's learned that mom exists independently of her perceptions of mom, she feels much more safe and secure. Now she knows Mom still exists and will likely come back around as she has done many times before. Let's go back to that abstract truth that the floor you're walking across is comprised entirely of atoms, which are themselves comprised of 99.9999999999999% empty space. Again, this is something you know if you were listening in elementary school science class, but if that were at the front of your mind, it would make the experience of walking across that floor a whole lot more frightening. So we believe what our eyes are telling us. It makes sense on the emotional level. We end up feeling extremely wobbly when we focus too much on these abstract truths. Here's the rub. Eventually, if you stay with it, the truth will set you free. It takes a while to integrate these ideas or to interpret them in a way which is conducive to your peace, your joy, and your awareness of love or connection. You have to stay with the process and trust that the next principle that's introduced will resolve the dissonance. In music, the dissonant note is often referred to as a brown note, and what good improvisers learn is there is always a perfect note that will resolve the brown note in a way that brings it back into harmony with the rest of the musical piece, in the most surprising way. So you wait and trust. That's why I ask again, just like with my last video, to stay with me. I promise to resolve the emotional and cognitive dissonance that this video might have caused in the next one. These ideas appear very frightening on the surface, but if they're pointing at the truth, as these scientists are convinced they are, we'd better face them. Quote, "You can't behave appropriately unless you perceive accurately," end quote. Otherwise, our perception of the world will remain distorted, and we will not be capable of making the right decisions. If we're seeing snakes where there are only garden hoses, the knowledge of this will inevitably resolve into a greater degree of peace of mind for you. Thanks for your time.